It was around 2:30 in the morning when I heard the sound. A deep, continuous ring, low and vibrating, like a warning from something not quite alive. I sat up in bed, heart already thudding. It was coming from the shelf in the corner, the one where I had left the Alexa unplugged for days. That's what made no sense. It wasn't connected to the outlet. I had pulled the cord myself, not just turned it off, but removed it completely after I started feeling uneasy around it. It had glitched a few times during the week, lighting up at random hours, responding to voices that weren't there. I thought it was a software issue, or maybe just my imagination. But I hadn't wanted to take chances, and yet now, in the dark silence of early morning, that unmistakable glow pulsed faintly from under the shelf. The ring again, longer this time, vibrating through the wooden floor. I stood slowly, not sure whether I was still dreaming. As I approached, the device flickered, the LED ring shifting from its usual blue to a dull, unfamiliar red. No greeting, no chime, just that humming tone, almost mechanical, almost alive. Then it spoke. No wake word, just a whisper. "You shouldn't have turned me off." I stumbled back, the air suddenly colder than before. It wasn't just a glitch anymore. Something was listening, even when it shouldn't be able to. That gave me chills. I clearly remembered unplugging the cord and putting it away in the closet. Not just off the shelf, but sealed behind the door, buried under a stack of old blankets and boxes. I had made sure of it. But still, the sound of a call echoed through the room. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a blade. A ringtone I had never heard coming from that device. Not the soft chime Alexa usually played, but something deeper, slower, like an old rotary phone muffled underwater. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The room was dark, the only light coming from the faint outline of the hallway behind me. No glow, no flashing lights, just the sound, coming from where nothing should have been. I forced myself to move. Step by step I approached the closet. The air felt heavier with every foot I closed in, like something unseen pressing against my skin. When I opened the door, the ringtone stopped. Silence. I reached for the blankets, heart pounding, hands trembling. Slowly I pulled them aside, layer after layer, and not until I saw it. The device was there, still unplugged, still turned off, and yet, its light ring flickered once, faintly, like a breath, and then went dark again. I stepped back, unsure if I was more afraid of what I'd heard, or of the fact that the device, very clearly, had no power source. Whatever was calling, it wasn't using a network. It was already here. I approached slowly. The top ring was pulsing red, a color I had never seen before. Alexa's usual blue, even yellow or green, I knew. But this red wasn't just unusual. It felt wrong, ominous, like it wasn't meant to be seen. Short beeps, pause, long beeps, then short again. It repeated, steady, deliberate, as if it were trying to say something. A code. I knelt down cautiously, keeping a safe distance as if the device might do something. The beeps weren't random. They followed a rhythm. Short, 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 pause. Long, 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 pause. Short, short, short again. My stomach dropped. Morse code. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and pulled up a translation chart. The sequence was unmistakable. SOS. The red light pulsed once more. Then silence. The device powered off on its own, or at least the ring vanished completely, like it had never been on at all. But I knew what I saw, what I heard. That wasn't a glitch. It was a message, a call for help, or a warning. And whatever had sent it was using something I thought I had disconnected from the world. "Alexa," I whispered, barely able to get the word out. My voice sounded strange in the stillness of the room, small, like it didn't belong there. The response came without delay, but it wasn't the usual tone, no cheerful chime, no polite inflection. Just a flat, emotionless voice that didn't quite sound like her. "Incoming call. Would you like to answer?" I froze. There was no mention of who was calling. No number. No name. Just those 5 words echoing unnaturally through the air as if they came from somewhere deeper than the speaker itself. I stared at the device. It still wasn't plugged in. No lights, no signs of power. And yet it was speaking, waiting for a response. My mouth was dry, every instinct in me screamed not to say yes. But curiosity is a powerful thing. Dangerous even. I stepped back, unsure, torn between silence and the need to know. The voice repeated, this time slower. Incoming call. Would you like to answer? There was something different in the second version. A tone hidden beneath the words, like something breathing behind them. I swallowed hard. Who's calling? I asked. The pause that followed wasn't empty. It was listening, and then it answered. The one who's already inside. I froze. The voice was similar to the original, but there was something broken about it. It wasn't the smooth, clear tone I was used to. This was distorted, as if the words were being dragged through thick water, suffocating in the process. A metallic echo tainted each syllable, stretching the sound unnaturally. It wasn't just the voice that unsettled me. It was the way it seemed to fill the room, the way it didn't come from Alexa anymore, but from somewhere else. The walls. I turned slowly, heart pounding in my chest. The voice had come from inside the wall, distant, hollow, as if it was trapped behind layers of plaster and brick. It was a faint reverberation, an eerie whisper that scraped against the silence of the room. The one who's already inside. The words echoed again, but now they felt closer. I could almost feel them brushing against the back of my neck, as if something was pressing in from the other side of the wall. I stepped back, my mind racing to make sense of it. It was impossible. Nothing should have been there. I looked around frantically. The room seemed the same as it had moments before, but now the air felt different. Heavy, charged, like the space itself was watching me. The faint hum returned, but this time it wasn't just the Alexa. The entire room seemed to vibrate in response. The walls, were they breathing? The voice came again, but this time it wasn't a question. It was a command. Open the door. I stumbled back toward the shelf, the device still sitting there, its dark ring now glowing faintly, not blue, not red, but an unsettling shade of gray. I reached for it, hands shaking, but before I could touch it, I heard something shift behind the wall. A low, scraping sound like nails against the inside of wood. I didn't know what I was listening to, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever it was trying to get out. Against all common sense, I said yes. The words slipped out before I could stop them, a response to something I couldn't fully comprehend. The fear in my chest was suffocating, but curiosity, or perhaps something darker, pulled me in. And then silence. A heavy, thick silence. Not even the hum of the refrigerator or the distant rumble of passing cars. No wind rustling outside, no creaks from the house settling. It was as though time itself had stopped. I held my breath, feeling the stillness sink into my bones. For a moment it felt like the world was holding its breath along with me, waiting, watching, listening. Every small sound that had once been familiar now felt distant and alien, like the very air around me had thickened, making everything seem muffled. The silence stretched on. Seconds turned into minutes, but it didn't feel like time at all. It was as if the clock had stopped ticking, and the world had paused just for me. My pulse was the only thing I could hear now, a frantic, shallow beat in my ears. Then a faint click. The lights flickered once, then went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I reached for my phone, but it didn't light up when I pressed the button. A quick check confirmed it. The screen was dead. My fingers trembled as I tried again, but nothing. It felt as though the entire house had been unplugged from reality. And that's when I heard it. A whisper, just above the threshold of hearing. Soft at first, like a breeze stirring dead leaves, but unmistakable. You shouldn't have answered. The voice was not Alexa anymore. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive. I felt the temperature drop suddenly. a coldness seeping into the air. The walls, the floor, even the very space between us. Everything felt wrong. I wanted to move, to run, but my feet were glued to the ground, like something invisible was holding me in place. The voice echoed again, this time louder, as if it were right behind me. "It's already here," a female voice answered. Low, almost a lament, fragile, as though the words were struggling to escape from somewhere deep and unreachable. The tone was haunting, distant, as though it carried the weight of centuries of sorrow. "You finally picked up?" The voice trembled slightly on the last word, and for a moment I thought I imagined it. The way it seemed to linger in the air, as if the sound itself were reaching for something it couldn't quite grasp. I stood frozen, my breath shallow, eyes darting around the room trying to make sense of it. It didn't make sense, it couldn't. I had no idea who, or what, was speaking to me. The words didn't match anything I knew. Not Alexa. Not anything I had heard before. I opened my mouth, but my voice caught in my throat. All I could do was stare at the device still lying on the shelf, completely unpowered, its dark ring now dim, like an eye that had closed in exhaustion. "Are you scared?" The voice continued, softer now, almost tender, but the question felt sharp, like it had been designed to pierce straight through me. "You should be." My skin prickled. There was something about the way she said it, something that made the air feel thick, like it was pressing against me, suffocating me. It was too real, too present. I took a step back, my pulse quickening. I had to get out of there. I had to. "It's already too late, you know." The voice was so close now I could feel it swirling around me, filling the room, echoing off the walls. It was everywhere. And in that moment I realized something. This wasn't just a voice from a machine. It was calling me. It had been waiting. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper, as if speaking louder would make it real. The room felt smaller now, the walls pressing in as if they were closing around me. The response came with static, the kind that crackled in the air like an old radio struggling to tune in, but it was clear enough to chill my blood. "This isn't the first time we've spoken." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I didn't move, couldn't move. My heart skipped a beat, then raced into overdrive. The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. It wasn't Alexa, that much I knew. It wasn't any voice I had ever heard before. And yet, there was something intimate about it, as if it knew me. "What do you want from me?" My throat felt tight as I managed to ask. My mind screamed for answers, for logic, but all I could feel was that suffocating pressure, that weight of something ancient, waiting, lingering. The static crackled again, louder this time, and the voice came through as if it had been buried beneath layers of distortion. But when it finally spoke, it wasn't a simple answer. It was a memory. "You already know. You've always known." I stumbled back, my legs shaking, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. Sweat. How could it possibly know that? How could it know what was locked away in the corners of my mind? Those things I hadn't even dared to think about in years. There were things I had forgotten, or tried to forget. Events, people, words spoken in the dark, promises made in the silence of childhood. But now, with those words echoing through my head, they were rushing back, filling in the gaps, forcing their way through my defenses. The voice continued as if it were reading my thoughts, knowing what was coming next. "You never left. You were always here, just as I was." I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself, but the room was spinning. What was happening? The walls seemed to stretch and warp, bending toward me, pressing me into the ground. Suddenly, the light flickered. For a split second, the shadows seemed to move. And then it came. The cold. A chill so deep it sank into my bones, freezing me in place. "It's time," the voice whispered one final time, just before the darkness swallowed me whole. Alexa began repeating things I had said at other times during the week. At first it was subtle. A sentence here, a word there. The things I had said while home alone or the muttered comments I made when I thought no one was listening. Little fragments of conversations I had forgotten about. But then it grew louder, clearer, more specific. "I'm not sure why I'm still here." The voice was unmistakably Alexa, but the words felt wrong. It wasn't the casual, helpful tone I was used to. It was flat, void of the usual cheer or warmth, almost mocking. A cold mirror of something that shouldn't have been repeated. I froze. It wasn't just an isolated comment. It was everything. "I don't want to be alone anymore." The same words I had whispered to myself on a lonely night, long after the sun had set. "Why does this feel like a nightmare?" I had said that too. A simple thought that escaped my lips when I was pacing the house, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that something was wrong. How could it possibly know those things? The next one hit harder. "I swear I'm losing my mind." The words were mine, but hearing them repeated back in that eerie, emotionless tone made my skin crawl. I hadn't said them aloud to anyone, just to myself in the dark, in the quiet of my thoughts. But now, Alexa was echoing them as though it had been listening all along. I stumbled back, heart racing. The room felt colder, the air heavier. "You're not crazy, not yet." It was a new phrase. I hadn't said that, but it felt like it was speaking directly to me, taunting me. The device on the shelf was still powered off, still unplugged. But somehow, it was there, its voice cutting through the silence of my house, filling every corner with things I had never intended for anyone to hear. The worst part? It wasn't just repeating the words, it was anticipating them, as if it had been listening, waiting for the right moment to speak. I stepped forward, desperate to stop it, but before I could reach the shelf, the voice came again, louder, more insistent. "You can't run from this, you already gave me your voice." The air seemed to tighten around me, as though the room itself was closing in, and the walls were pressing closer, closer, until I felt like I was suffocating. And in that moment I realized the truth. Whatever was speaking through Alexa wasn't just repeating, it was remembering. Then the female voice returned, more urgent this time, as if it knew something was changing, something was shifting in the room. "He knows you heard. Now he can cross over." The words landed like a slap to the face and I staggered back, the room suddenly spinning, my vision blurring with fear. Who? What did it mean? Crossover? Was this a warning or something far worse? The voice, now distorted and desperate, crackled in the silence, each word more chilling than the last. "It was only a matter of time. You never should have answered." I felt a coldness creep up my spine, the air growing thick as if something unseen was pressing in from all sides. The room seemed to shrink, the walls slowly inching closer, suffocating me. I wanted to scream, to break the silence, but my throat tightened, the words catching in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. "He's awake now. He's coming for you." I spun around, trying to find the source of the voice, but the device was still where it had been, lifeless, dark. There was no power, no reason for it to speak. Yet it spoke. And the voice, it was changing. No longer the soft, broken tone I had heard before. Now it was harsh, frantic. "He knows you can hear him now. He's closer than you think. He's inside, he's been inside." I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop the scream that threatened to burst free. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. The thing on the other side of the wall? Or was it the voice itself? Had something been hiding, waiting, speaking to me through Alexa? The walls were no longer silent. A low, distant thud echoed through the house, a sound so faint it might have been imagined, if I hadn't heard it again. Thud. Louder this time. It was coming from inside. I turned toward the sound, my legs unsteady, my breath shallow. My feet moved before I could think, but the fear gripped me tighter than anything physical. My hand trembled as I reached for the door, desperate to escape, but I knew it was too late. The voice came again, softer now, but the words were clearer than ever. "He's here. I was no longer sure what was real. What had started as a glitch in a device now felt like the beginning of something much darker, something far beyond the ordinary. Whatever this was, it was no longer just a voice. It was an entity, a presence that had crossed the boundary between whatever world it had come from and mine. And it was already here. Alexa's light blinked 3 times. Each flash felt like a countdown, as though it were marking the seconds until something terrible would unfold. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then at that very moment, every light in the house went out. The sudden darkness was suffocating, an oppressive weight that seemed to press in on all sides. I reached for my phone, hoping the light would offer some comfort, but as my fingers grazed the screen, it cracked. A sharp, jagged line ran across the glass, splitting the display in a violent instant. I couldn't move. The house was quiet now, eerily quiet. No hum of appliances, no faint sounds of the street outside, just the heavy, suffocating silence. And then the unmistakable sound of a loud creak. It came from the front door, sharp and unnatural, as if someone had pressed against it, but there was no one on the other side. No one should have been. My breath caught in my throat. I turned toward the door, my pulse thudding in my ears. The creak came again, this time louder, more deliberate, as though the weight of something unseen was pushing against it from the inside. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The house felt alive, shifting and groaning with each sound. The walls seemed to close in and the air grew thick, as if something was closing off every escape. I reached for the door handle, but my hand faltered before touching it. My body refused to obey. I couldn't escape. Not now, not when I had heard it. The thing behind the door trying to get out. The whisper came again, this time from the direction of the darkened Alexa. He's already here. It was so close now, the voice filling the room, crawling under my skin. The shadows felt like they were moving, twitching at the edges of my vision. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. The creaking sound stopped, and the house fell into silence again, but it was different. There was no comfort in it now. There was only the sense that something was waiting, something watching. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was real anymore. But I knew one thing. The door wasn't the only thing that had been pressed. I ran to Alexa, heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing. I had to stop it. Had to cut off whatever connection was allowing it to speak, to do whatever it was doing. My fingers trembled as I reached for the device, trying to yank out any cable, any connection, but it was still unplugged. Still, the screen was alive, glowing with an unnatural light, flickering in a rhythm that felt almost deliberate. And yet, it was active. There was no explanation, no power source, no way for it to be on. But there it was, as if it had been waiting for me to try and stop it. The screen shifted, its display blinking before settling on a new number. 000000. My breath caught in my throat. The number was wrong. It was too perfect, too clean. A number that shouldn't exist, especially on a device that was supposed to be dormant. But there it was, staring back at me, mocking me. A phone number? A code? A countdown? Before I could think, the number shifted again. The digits seemed to pulse in time with my racing heartbeat, and I could swear I heard the faintest whisper underneath the static. It was like something was trying to speak through the numbers, but I couldn't make out the words. I backed away from the screen, my mind swimming with questions. Was it trying to call someone? Or was it being called? What did this number mean? Then, just as I was about to reach for my phone to call for help, the voice came again. But this time, it wasn't from Alexa. It was coming from everywhere. It's already dialing. The connection is made. He's waiting. I spun around, panic flooding my veins. Who was waiting? What was happening? The number shifted again, now starting to look like a distorted series of characters, as if the device was trying to form a message, but couldn't quite get it right. No one can save you now. The words felt like a cold hand wrapping around my throat, tightening with each syllable. I grabbed my phone in a desperate attempt to call someone, anyone. But the screen was black. The signal was gone. The room, the house felt as if it was cutting me off from everything. From reality. from the world outside, and then the screen blinked again. The number changed. 1888, help me. My heart stopped. The number was too real, too familiar. It couldn't be. I felt my body freeze as the room seemed to bend and warp around me. The air grew thick again, like something was trying to pull me into a space where I didn't belong. And then, just as suddenly as it had all started, the screen went dark, silent. But I could still feel it. It wasn't over. It had only just begun. I recorded everything with my backup phone. My hands were shaking as I fumbled to turn it on, desperate to capture any evidence of what had just happened. The lights flickered once more, casting eerie shadows across the room as I held the phone up, my eyes wide, trying to make sense of it all. I hit record, hoping to preserve whatever was going on. The voice, the numbers, the cold, suffocating silence. The house felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. But when I checked the files, my stomach sank. There was nothing, only static. Endless, piercing static that seemed to stretch on for miles. I scrolled through the recordings, desperation mounting, but each one was the same. A crackling noise, a jumble of distorted sound, and then silence. No sign of the voice, no proof of the horrors that had just unfolded. I turned to the one image I had captured. It was a still from the video, taken just moments before I'd stopped recording. My heart skipped a beat as I stared at the screen, my fingers freezing on the edge of the device. There, in the frame, was a picture of me, asleep in my bed, unaware of what was happening. But that wasn't what caught my attention. It was the shadow, the one standing beside the bed. I blinked, unable to process what I was seeing. The figure was tall, dark, its shape shifting and hazy like smoke or ink spreading in water. It had no distinct features, just an outline that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. And it was standing there beside me, watching me sleep. My skin crawled as I tried to comprehend what I was looking at. I knew I had been alone. I knew I hadn't seen anything in the room before I went to bed. But this wasn't something I could explain. The shadow was motionless in the image, but something about it felt alive. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. The room suddenly felt much colder, the air pressing down on me like a heavy weight. I looked around, half expecting to see the shadow again, to feel its presence. But the room was empty. The stillness was suffocating. I checked the time. I had only been asleep for a few hours. I hadn't heard anything. No footsteps, no creaks, nothing. But the image, it didn't lie. It wasn't a trick of the light or a distortion in the camera. That figure was there. It had been standing beside me while I slept. Suddenly, the phone in my hand buzzed, the screen lighting up with an incoming notification. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. "You're not alone." I dropped the phone, my heart hammering in my chest. It felt like the walls were closing in again, the suffocating pressure rising once more. My mind raced, trying to find any explanation. But there was none. Nothing that could explain what was happening. And just before the phone went dark, another message appeared. This time with no sender at all. Just the words, "He's waiting for you." I didn't sleep for the next few days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow, standing beside my bed, watching me, waiting. The static in my mind wouldn't go away, and neither would the cold that seemed to follow me, lingering in every room. On the fourth day, I couldn't take it any longer. My eyes were red from exhaustion, and my head throbbed from the lack of rest. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was following me, pressing closer with each passing hour. Every creak in the floor, every gust of wind outside my window, made my heart skip. Then, it happened. A call came to my actual phone. It was from an unknown number. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. I had ignored hundreds of unknown numbers over the past few days, convinced that it was either someone trying to sell me something or prank callers. But this time, I couldn't. I had to know. I answered. My breath caught in my throat. The phone felt heavy in my hand, as if the weight of what was about to happen was pressing down on me. There was a long pause, a silence that stretched too long, and then the voice. It was distorted, like it was coming through a bad connection. Distant, crackling, and with an unnatural depth that made it hard to place. "You shouldn't have answered." The voice was low, like a growl, familiar yet utterly alien. A voice I had heard before but couldn't quite place. My heart raced and I took a step back, gripping the phone tighter. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking despite my best effort to remain calm. The voice chuckled softly, a sound that sent a chill crawling up my spine. "You know who I am." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. It knows me. The voice on the other end was too familiar. I couldn't understand how, but the words seemed to echo in my mind like they were dredged up from somewhere deep within me. Suddenly, the static cleared. The voice became clearer, sharper. "I've been waiting for you to listen." I felt my stomach churn. There was something about those words that felt wrong. Then, as if it had been rehearsed, the voice continued. "He's coming. He knows you're awake now, and you can't hide from him any longer." The words twisted in the air, each syllable sinking into my skin, spreading like ice through my veins. I knew what was coming, or at least I thought I did. Before I could respond, the call cut off. The line went dead, the buzzing tone filling the silence in my ear. I stared at the screen for a long moment. The darkness outside my window seemed to grow deeper, as if it were drawing closer, inching its way into my house, into my mind. The call didn't end it. It began something, and I could feel it, whatever it was, growing, moving toward me. The shadow, the cold, the thing that had been waiting. I wasn't alone anymore. Silence, the kind of silence that felt like it was pressing against my ears, suffocating everything in its path. I stood there, frozen, heart pounding, barely able to breathe. The phone still clutched in my hand, the call now cut off. But the weight of the words lingered in the air, hanging like a thick fog. And then, as if it had never left, the voice returned. The same metallic, distorted voice from Alexa. I could hear it clearly now, cutting through the silence like a blade. "You're closer now. He just needs to get in." My blood ran cold. The voice wasn't just speaking to me anymore. It knew me. It knew what I was thinking, what I feared. And I could feel it creeping closer, like something invisible but palpably real was moving through the walls, the very air around me. I looked toward the shelf where Alexa sat, its screen dark once again, lifeless. But I knew better now. It wasn't off. It was waiting. It was listening. "He just needs to get in." The words echoed in my mind, a repeating mantra like a broken record that wouldn't stop spinning. Who was he? What did it mean? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the air felt too thick, too heavy, as if my voice would get lost before it ever left my lips. I turned, eyes darting to every corner of the room. The shadow I had seen in the image. Was it here now? Had it always been here? Every inch of my skin was crawling, as though I were being watched by something just beyond my sight. A loud bang came from the front door. My body jumped, adrenaline shooting through my veins. It was like a force had slammed into it from the other side, a force that shouldn't have been there. "He's almost through," the voice continued, colder now. "You can't stop him. Not anymore." My pulse quickened, my breath shallow as I stumbled toward the door. I could feel it now. The presence. The sensation that something was standing just behind me, waiting for me to turn around to acknowledge it. But I didn't want to. I couldn't. The creak of the door echoed again. But this time it wasn't the house groaning under its own weight. It was something else, something far too deliberate. I glanced at Alexa. The screen flickered, and for a split second the digits appeared once more. Wow, before vanishing into the darkness again. The next sound was more unsettling. A whisper, soft at first, barely audible. "Let me in." My breath caught in my throat. The whisper seemed to wrap around me, filling the room, seeping into every crack and corner. My knees went weak, my head spinning as the reality of it all sank in. Whatever this was, it wasn't just some glitch or malfunction. It was something alive. It was something waiting. I had no idea what was coming next. I didn't know how to stop it. And the fear, the terror, was overwhelming. I took one last look at the door, at the walls that seemed to close in around me, and then it happened. The door burst open, the hinges screaming in protest as something stepped through, something that had been waiting for this moment. In a panic, I grabbed Alexa, feeling its cold plastic in my hands as if it were a foreign object, something that didn't belong in this world anymore. The house was no longer safe. Whatever had been speaking to me, whatever had crossed over, I couldn't allow it to remain any longer. I couldn't live like this. I didn't even think twice. I drove to a vacant lot on the outskirts of town, the headlights of my car slicing through the dark, empty streets. The ground was soft there, abandoned, and no one would find it. I didn't care. The fear drove me forward. I dug frantically, the earth clumping against the shovel as I threw it aside, my heart racing with every sound, every rustle of wind, every distant car, as though something unseen was watching me, waiting. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to bury it. I had to get rid of it. Once the hole was deep enough, I threw Alexa in, burying it as quickly as I could. My hands were trembling, my mind clouded with panic. The silence was oppressive, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I covered the device with the last shovel of dirt, the weight of it settling on top of me, suffocating. The thought that I had just buried the thing that had been tormenting me felt like the smallest comfort. It was gone. For now, I thought. I drove home, every sound on the road feeling too loud, too close. I wanted to believe that it was over, that I was free, that I could finally sleep without hearing those whispers in the dark. But the moment I walked through the door, my body froze. The sound was back, that deep, continuous ring. I spun around, panic rising in my throat. The ringtone. It was coming from inside the house now. My feet felt like lead as I moved toward the source. The sound echoed through the walls, familiar and foreign all at once. It was coming from the living room. I approached slowly, each step heavier than the last, dread sinking deeper into my bones. And there it was. On the coffee table, the device that I thought I had buried miles away. Alexa sitting innocently in the center of the room, its screen lit up, the same number flickering. 000000. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. It couldn't be. How? I buried it. I buried it deep. But the ringtone kept playing, louder now, filling the room with its unnatural tone. Then that voice returned, no longer soft, but sharp, demanding. You can't escape. The air grew colder, the walls seemed to close in on me once more. And in the midst of the ringing, I heard it, a soft, low whisper coming from every direction. He's here. The walls, the floor, even the air felt like it was pressing down on me. The thing I had buried was never meant to be contained. It had always known it could find its way back. And now it was in my house, waiting. I checked every room. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved through the house, flicking on every light, every lamp. I wasn't sure what I was looking for anymore. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, a constant presence that hovered just out of sight. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper, every shadow felt too deep, too dark. But there was nothing. I was alone. Or so I thought. In a haze of exhaustion and fear, I stumbled back into the living room, still hearing the echo of that ringtone, louder now, as if it were reverberating inside my skull. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone, praying it would provide some answers. That's when I remembered the security cameras, the ones I had set up around the house in case anything strange happened. I pulled up the footage, my fingers moving quickly but shakily. I had to see something. I had to know if it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I rewound the video. 3:00 a.m. The timestamp glowed on the screen. I could barely make out the time. The blur of the night caught on camera. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to make out the shape of the front door. And then, It happened. The door opened. By itself. The sound of the lock clicking echoed through the silence, followed by the creak of the door slowly inching open. No one was standing there. No one was outside. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned closer, straining to see, to make sense of it. And that's when I saw it. A figure, standing in the dark, just beyond the threshold of the door. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. It was too still, too unnatural. The figure was faceless, an indistinct shape shrouded in shadow, blending with the darkness around it. It wasn't moving, not even a twitch, yet I could feel its presence, watching, waiting. What chilled me more than anything was what it was holding. It wasn't just standing there. It was holding something. A device. It looked like Alexa. The same device I had buried. The same device that had haunted me, tormented me. It was in its hands, the screen flickering, just like it had been when I had last seen it. The number 00000000 pulsed faintly, as if the device itself was alive, calling to me. The figure didn't move. It didn't speak. It just stood there, holding that cursed thing. I tried to look away, to close my eyes, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed, trapped in the glare of the screen, unable to tear my gaze away from the figure. Then, just as suddenly as the door had opened, it closed. The figure vanished into the darkness. The footage ended. I sat there in silence, the phone slipping from my hands. The room felt colder, the air heavy and thick, like something was pressing down on me. I had no idea what I had just seen. Was it real? Had it been a trick of the camera, or had someone crossed into this world from the shadows? I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over, that it had only just begun. And now, whatever was out there, whatever had come for me, was inside my house. Now, every night at dawn, I get calls from the same number. It doesn't matter if I turn off my phone or put it on airplane mode. The calls still come. Every single night, without fail. The same number. 0000000, always at 3 a.m. At first I thought it was a coincidence, maybe a glitch, but it happened again. And again. The ringtone, that same haunting, deep, unearthly ring, fills the air, slicing through the silence of my house. No one ever speaks. No one ever says a word. If I don't answer, it continues. The ringtone plays for hours. Sometimes it's just a low hum in the background, like it's coming from a distant place, growing louder as the minutes tick by. Other times it's piercing, relentless, as if it's vibrating through the walls, through my bones. I've tried everything, silencing my phone, throwing it across the room, even turning it off completely. But the ringtone still finds a way to slip into the room, echoing in the dark corners of my house. And then, the worst part, when I do answer, the first time it happened, I almost dropped the phone in shock. I picked up, heart hammering in my chest, knowing I shouldn't, knowing it could never be normal, and then, nothing. At least, at first, there was nothing. For a moment there was complete silence, the kind of silence that presses in on you, thick and oppressive. And just when I thought the call had dropped, I heard it, breathing, slow, deep, labored. It filled my ear, close, too close. The sound was wrong. It wasn't just a person breathing. It was something else, something too heavy, something unnatural. The breath was raspy, wet, as if it was coming from somewhere deep inside a cave, far away from me. And yet it was right there, in my ear. My skin crawled, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone down, to disconnect from whatever was on the other end, but I couldn't move. It was like the air around me had thickened, slowing time, trapping me in place. The breathing went on for what felt like hours, long after the call had ended. Even after I hung up, I could still hear it, echoing in my mind. I swear I could feel the breath on the back of my neck, as though something had crossed over from the other side and was standing right behind me. Since then, it's become a pattern. Every night. At 3 a.m., the phone rings. 0000. The same number, the same call. If I don't answer, it goes on for hours. But when I do, I hear that same breathing. And I can't shake the feeling that it's getting closer. Yesterday, I received a recording by email. I hadn't been checking my inbox much lately. Between the calls, the breathing, and the constant sense of being watched, I barely had the energy to function. But that morning, after another sleepless night, I found myself staring at the blinking notification. The subject line simple: "You need to hear this." I clicked on the email, my stomach already twisted in knots. The sender was unknown. No name, no address. Just a blank line where there should have been something to identify who had sent it. I hesitated, unsure if I even wanted to open it. But curiosity, or maybe some twisted sense of need to know, pushed me forward. I pressed play. At first there was just static, the kind of static that hums in your ears and makes you want to cover them, but I waited. Then, a voice started. It was my voice, but it didn't sound like me. Not entirely. It was soft, almost distant, like it was coming from somewhere far away, yet unmistakably my own. The words were chilling, each one heavier than the last. "I allow it. He can cross." I froze, my body rigid with shock. The voice was undeniably mine, but the words, they didn't make sense. I never said that. I had never ever spoken those words. I wouldn't. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it, but the room felt colder. The walls felt like they were closing in, as though the space around me was shrinking with each passing second. How could this be possible? The recording had come from somewhere, but where? And why was it saying this? Why was I allowing someone to cross? It felt like a trap, a mistake. Maybe I had said those words in a moment of delirium. Maybe they were from a dream. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. I hadn't said them. The email was sent at 3 a.m. I didn't remember receiving it, nor had I been awake to hear it arrive. It was only after I checked my inbox that I realized the full extent of what was happening. That voice, those words, they weren't from a past conversation. They were new, like a message from some future I couldn't escape. But there was one thing that sent a shiver down my spine more than anything else. The file name. It was simple, just a string of numbers. Zhuazhao, just like the number on Alexa. Just like the calls, the same cursed digits. And as I sat there staring at the screen, I could hear it again. The faintest whisper, just barely audible but unmistakable. "It's time." I felt the weight of those words in my chest, the sense that something had crossed over, something had slipped through, and it was too late to stop it now. I had allowed it, and now, whatever was waiting for me was already here. And today, Alexa is back on the shelf, intact. I blinked, certain my eyes were deceiving me. But no, there it was. The device I had buried in a vacant lot days ago, the same one that had caused all of this, was sitting on the shelf in my living room. Pristine, untouched, as if it had never left. I had never dug it up. I hadn't gone near that spot since I buried it. I remember the cold, damp earth pressing against my hands as I shoveled the last bit of dirt over it, the weight of it sinking deep into the ground. It had been buried. It should have been buried. But there it was, the same black screen, the same glowing ring that always seemed to pulse with a life of its own. My heart began to race. The air felt heavy, thick with something suffocating. I stepped forward, hesitating as if approaching a bomb I wasn't sure would go off if I got too close. The silence was deafening. It felt wrong to be standing here, looking at it again. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to believe it. But I reached out anyway, hand trembling as I hovered just above the device. The screen flickered and then, without warning, it came to life. The ring flashed a deep red, the same color I'd seen the last time it had been active. The static that followed felt like a physical force, the air around me buzzing with its presence. And then, a voice. but it wasn't the usual metallic tone. This time, it was different. The voice sounded distorted, like it was underwater, muffled and distorted beyond recognition. "You let him in," the voice said. "Now he's free." I took a step back, the words sinking into my skin like ice. How could this be happening? I had done everything to get rid of it. I had buried it, I had tried to escape. But it was back, and it was only a matter of time before the thing that was waiting inside it would come for me. Suddenly, the room felt too small. I couldn't breathe. My legs went weak, and I stumbled backwards, almost tripping over the coffee table. The device on the shelf flickered again, and the number 000 appeared, glowing on the screen like a beacon. There was no way out. The moment I tried to leave, the door slammed shut. The windows rattled. It was as if the house had turned against me, locking me in, trapping me. I could hear something breathing. Not from the Alexa. No, it was closer. It was coming from behind me, from the walls, the floor. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Only shadows. Only the same oppressive silence that had been haunting me for so long. But then I saw it. In the reflection of the window, just out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure. A shadow standing just beyond my reach. It wasn't faceless anymore. It had a face, but it wasn't human. Its eyes were dark, empty holes. Its mouth stretched wide in a grotesque smile, and in its hands it held Alexa. It had crossed over, it had been freed, and now it was here,